Once upon a time, this was a Hummer, and so was this. And yep, that was a Hummer too. Hummers were big, rather brash SUVs, especially the H1, which drew inspiration from the AM General Humvee that has been used by the United States military for many years. These SUVs had some pretty darn good off-road capability, although I'm sure most owners just drove theirs to the grocery store and, maybe the mall once in a while? Hummers also had this great ability at letting the world know you were indeed not a member of the Sierra Club because you were chugging along in your overpriced gas-guzzling box on wheels. While there was a point in time, in the late 90s, early 2000s, that people didn't really mind if their SUV chugged tons of gas, we all know that in the late 2000s, gas prices shot way up. And lo and behold, not many people wanted to spend tens of thousands of dollars on a gas hog that had the aerodynamics of a cinder block. So sales of Hummer vehicles went way down. And we know what happened next. GM tossed Hummer into the automotive trash can, and everyone moved on. But as we know, Hummer is back. Only this time, instead of slurping fuel, Hummer will be consuming watts. This used to be a Hummer, but this is the new Hummer, the Hummer EV made by GMC. Once the bane of environmentalists, a Hummer now uses less fuel than a Toyota Prius. Who could have seen that coming years ago? I definitely couldn't myself. It's certainly interesting overall and has generated quite a bit of buzz in the automotive industry. But is this enough for GMC's electrifying new truck to succeed once it hits the showroom floor? Well, let's look at a few different aspects to the rebirth of the Hummer name in order to better understand why it's such a big deal, and then we'll dive into that question of whether or not this crazy new truck is just crazy enough to succeed. The Hummer EV is being built at a time where automakers are under pressure to make their vehicles increasingly fuel efficient. It seems that ever since Tesla showed the world that electric cars can be cool, companies have been slowly beginning to incorporate EVs of their own into their respective lineups, and GM is no exception. And as this chart from the USDA's Alternative Fuels Data Center shows, sales of electric vehicles have grown drastically since 2011. Less than 18,000 EVs were sold in the US that year, while last year more than 320,000 of them found themselves in American driveways. General Motors has made it a priority to start pivoting a major portion of its focus to electric vehicles. CNBC reports that since March 2019, the auto giant has poured in more than $4.5 billion in 3 US manufacturing sites to prepare for EV-related production. The goal of GM has been to release 20 new EVs globally by 2023, part of its triple zero vision of zero crashes, zero emissions, and zero congestion, all led by CEO Mary Barra. The Hummer EV isn't GM's first pure electric vehicle. That honor belongs to the Chevy Bolt, but it is the General's first EV that is, really exciting, I guess you could say. The Bolt is a good car in its own right, but it's much more humble, perhaps, is the right word to use. The Hummer, on the other hand, just look at it. It is way more eye-catching. You have the imposing light bar on the front end, chunky, flared, aggressive bodywork, huge, knobby off-road tires, and look how it is just so wide. It is such an imposing stance. This is a truck, whether you think it's ugly or beautiful, that either way simply commands attention. GM wants the world to know it's serious about making EVs as part of its long-term future, and the Hummer EV is an exciting product that proves this auto giant is truly serious. The General's new electric truck isn't just an exciting new electric vehicle in general to add to his portfolio, it also comes at a time when consumers are simply clamoring for trucks and SUVs above everything else. Whether it's the taller riding height, the interior space and versatility, the image of ruggedness, or the security of all-wheel traction in inclement weather, or all of the above, trucks and SUVs have been exploding in popularity over the years, and sales of actual cars like coupes and sedans have collectively been dropping. The GMC Hummer EV looks like the kind of vehicle that many consumers want, and because people are not just thirsty for trucks but also for SUVs, the Hummer EV will even spawn a variant to satisfy those customers. Because of this, the Hummer EV is helping General Motors continue to give the people what they want to buy, and unlike most trucks and SUVs, this vehicle doesn't guzzle a single drop of gas. While it's easy to think of the Chevrolet Corvette as General Motors' halo performance vehicle, the Hummer EV may actually need to be part of the conversation as well when it becomes available for sale. In the top spec model, GMC says the Hummer EV can hit 60 miles per hour in just 3 seconds. That's pretty stinking fast for anything on wheels, and just plain astonishing for a production truck. If that claim ends up being proven in testing, then the Hummer EV will be the quickest production truck in the world. Right now, that honor belongs to the beastly Ram TRX, which is kind of the antithesis of the Hummer if you think about it, because it is powered by a 700 plus horsepower supercharged gasoline V8. In testing, car and driver recorded a phenomenal 3.7 second 0 to 60 sprint for the Ram TRX, which is the current production pickup truck record. But that may very well be wiped away once the Hummer begins production. However, when we consider the Hummer's output, it really shouldn't be too surprising if GMC's electric truck does indeed leave the TRX behind in a race. After all, top models produce 1,000 horsepower, so that's a huge power advantage. That's a ridiculously big number, but it's kind of fitting given that this is Hummer we're talking about. Hummers of old were all about excess, you could say, and the new Hummer, well, it should have some excess too, I think, and I believe GM had that in mind when it built this thing. I doubt that this truck will handle like it rides on rails, of course, but it is pretty cool to know that you could leave a Hellcat owner in your dust if you race them in this thing. Yep, it's nothing I would have previously imagined, but GM's most powerful vehicle is not the Corvette, it is a truck. And as such, it is now one of its best performance vehicles, period. If you remember some of the first commercials for the Hummer EV back in the Super Bowl, not a lot of the truck was shown, but we did see a lot of LeBron James, the king himself. GM's use of LeBron as an influencer was probably helpful to generating hype for the new truck. Many people like what LeBron likes. Not all of them can afford a super expensive truck like the Hummer EV, but some of them might be able to. On Twitter, the king expressed his excitement for GMC's newest product, and you can bet other celebrities are going to be signing checks to General Motors to put a Hummer in their driveway too. Back when the old school Hummer H1 first became popular, it was partly because Arnold Schwarzenegger was one of the first notable people to buy one. People notice what celebrities like, what they wear, who they date, and even what they drive. So if LeBron is going to be driving one of these things around, you can bet the Hummer EV is going to become a bit of a status icon, just like the original H1 used to be. So even though it's a GMC that's priced at 6 digits, I think people with the means to afford this truck won't care that it's not a Mercedes or a Land Rover. After all, GMC sells a lot of Yukon Denali's and Sierra Denali's to people who have lots of money to spend. And in the Hummer's case, you can barely even tell that it's a GMC. It's just this little teeny badge on the vehicle. Instead, you just see the name Hummer everywhere, because Hummer is supposed to be a new sub-brand of GMC. And besides the celebrity stuff, let's just consider the Hummer as a vehicle itself that, even without any help, is cool all on its own. It is a huge, rugged off-road capable truck with incredibly interesting styling and an imposing presence. It has 1,000 horsepower, yet amazingly doesn't drink a drop of fuel, and it costs 6 figures. This is a larger-than-life truck, and it is undoubtedly going to increase the coolness factor of GMC and likely General Motors as a whole. So with all of these things considered, we can clearly see that the Hummer EV is an incredibly important vehicle for GM. It's an exciting new product that gives consumers another reason to become more interested in electric vehicles, and it proves to the world that the General is committed to making EVs a core part of its future production. But another question remains: will people buy it? I truly believe this will sell in enough numbers to more affluent drivers, I guess you could say, unless the US economy collapses or something. But there will be challenges that General Motors faces from other competitors. Tesla has its sci-fi Cybertruck on the horizon, Ford has an all-electric F-150 coming in the near future, and the up-and-coming company Rivian is slated to build its own electric trucks and SUVs. So the Hummer EV will have some interesting competition. But you know what? Competition is good, and it ensures that General Motors will not simply be able to rest on its laurels with this truck. I'm sure the company already knows that, which may be part of the reason why they made this crazy truck so, well, crazy. If the Hummer EV is any indication, the future for GM is bright, and so too perhaps is the electric vehicle market. EVs are no longer just compact blobs on wheels that only members of the Green Party want to buy. EVs are increasingly becoming more and more cool and accepted. They say you can't teach an old dog new tricks, but General Motors has proven you can. It has taken the old Hummer name, along with the stigma it carried, and transformed it into one of its most ambitious efforts toward one day becoming a zero-emissions company. In recent memory, all this old dog knew how to do was roll over and play dead. But now, it looks like it's ready to go fetch some sales for GM.